David Zaritsky for the Bond Experience.
Joe Darlington from Being James Bond.
Oh, and we are back, and we're here today to keep our conversation going on a conversation that really started a little while ago on our trip to Washington, right?
Yep.
So we had started to talk, and thanks to Joe, about not so much an argument, but a theory that each Bond actor who's played Bond, their very first Bond film was the best.
Yeah.
And we're slowly disproving that.
Kind of, yeah. The theory basically was that when they bring in a new actor, they tend to use that as an opportunity to get back to basics and figure out what is it that makes James Bond tick and what are the characteristics of Bond, and they tend to do great films. I think this one is finally going to really prove that theory.
Okay, let's give it a try. So what we decided to do was to watch all 6 of the films and really try to analyze it as these different characteristics of what's best and what's not. And we're at Casino Royale now. So obviously a movie after probably everybody's heart out there. Have you ever heard of a person who said, Casino Royale doesn't really do it for me?
Right.
You don't normally hear about it. So,
No.
All right, take me back the first time you watched, heard, and experienced Casino Royale.
Wow. This one, honest to God, I have been seeing the Bond films in the theater since Octopussy. Octopussy was one of my favorites, but I think even then it took me a little while because I'm younger, so it took me a while for it to sort of get the whole thing even. After a while, it really... And then the Brosnans came through, the Daltons and the Brosnans, and they were always, good, serviceable. You saw what you liked, you saw what you didn't like. Casino blew my mind. I don't think I've ever walked out of the first showing of any Bond film over the moon excited. This one was spectacular. I mean, this is going to be a gush session. So I mean, just
prepare yourselves.
I apologize already.
Get some tissues, some napkins.
Yeah. This is going to be a lot of gushing over. I have honestly said, look, if you don't the people who don't know James Bond, they don't get what it's about or what the phenomenon is. This is the one I would show them.
Yeah.
Because again, they're not struggling with an older film or trying to put themselves in a different time frame.
Right.
You can just pop in Casino Royale. If you still don't get it, that's all I got for you.
So you were obviously like me. I mean, when Casino Royale came around, I was really into Bond to the point where Danielle and I wound up attending the U.S. premiere. In Baltimore, and it was phenomenal. So we got caught up in the premiere, but I do remember walking into Casino Royale wondering how Daniel Craig was going to do. He was a new Bond. There was a lot of the whole thing of like a blonde Bond, and he's afraid of going on a boat because he needs a life jacket. All these things were like they were weighing on me. So the first time I saw Casino Royale, I was definitely in a tsunami of, oh my gosh, I'm in the premiere and we're all dressed up.
Yeah.
But a part of me, when we sat down in a bar, I'll never forget this, in Baltimore, there were a lot of people, some people who that were like, oh, he's not Bond. There was a little part of me that was like, am I just trying to convince myself that I love this movie and love this Bond?
Right. I honestly, again...
There were no questions for you.
No. In fact, I even remember, again, it is funny because this was probably my Bond geekness was already pretty peaked. In fact, my proof, my very first...
Give me proof.
My very first podcast, my very first Being James Bond podcast came out a week before the release of Casino Royale.
You're joking. Before you had even seen it.
Before you had even seen it. In fact, I was already a Bond nerd, right? I mean, I was sort of full gear.
Yes.
Through the later Brosnans. I mean, that was sort of when I really again, GoldenEye, I was already a fan. By the second and third, it was rush out to see the new one every time. Like, I'm really starting to, and by Dying of the Day, I really kind of just became a Bond fanatic.
It was an event. Yeah. Everything was an event.
Exactly.
Yes.
So when Casino was up and coming, I was already there. So when I saw the trailer for Casino, I remember thinking like, wow, I think they're really onto something. I really think that there's something special about this one. It really had, I mean, that first teaser trailer even had the classic gun barrel, which we never saw in the movie actually, or any of them since, by the way. But I mean, that one really said, I really think they got something here.
Right.
So I was pretty, trepidatious.
Yeah.
But I was pretty on board. So when I actually saw it, I mean, no, there was no hesitation. I mean, and again, Casino Royale is the novel that I have read the most.
Yes.
Like, it's every once in a while when you get especially over the years, I haven't read the books in a while, and I think up until recently, I don't even think I'd read all of them.
Right.
But Casino, let me grab Casino and start with that again. So I must have read that at least 3 or 4 times cover to cover. So I knew it pretty well. So when I was hearing lines,
Job's done. The bitch is dead.
out of the novel, I'm going
Just drew
crazy.
you in.
When I'm seeing scenes that I had envisioned in my mind,
Yes.
that I told myself I will never see on screen. When I saw it on screen, I said, "You have to be kidding me!"
Yeah.
I really genuinely did not. But if you asked me a couple of years before that if they could ever do Casino Royale, I would have said they could. They'll put the card game in there, but then later on we'll find the big giant laser beam satellite that's the real thing. So I figured they could do a version of it. I never would have thought they would have done the actual story.
So I'm actually incredibly envious of you because I believe I fully have gotten to that appreciation that you have today over time.
Yeah.
I was coming off of the Brosnan era. I was coming off of, the good-looking model type guy.
Yeah.
So when I was introduced to Daniel Craig, I will admit, when I see him in, Madagascar for the first time, you see him in color and everything. It's after the PTS.
Yes.
I'm analyzing him, and I'm like, the first thing I said, which, by the way, is good, is this guy's a brute.
Yeah.
He runs through walls and he's going like this and he smashes and he hits the ground and he goes, blah, 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 blah. I mean, this guy's a brute. This is not Pierce Brosnan. And I will tell you, I got there halfway through the movie, meaning this is a Bond that I can embrace. It has nothing to do with age or performance, but everything about him was about, he is a capable badass. And I also remember this rush of halfway through being, okay, this is the new way it's going to be, and a total acceptance of it.
Yes. There was that feeling, and it's funny. I remember naively feeling after Casino Royale, I said to myself, they finally got all the elements correct. I'll never get a bad James Bond movie ever again because they know how to do it now.
Whoops. We're not saying anything.
But the stars absolutely align for this one.
Yes.
I mean, it really is, and not to downplay the filmmakers in any way, shape, or form, because they deserve a ton of credit for that film. But it really felt like it was almost an accident, where it was the perfect accident.
Yes.
Where again, all the planets just align perfectly and everything just works. The performances.
Without a doubt, and I have to say something, I don't think anybody's going to disagree with this, is that Bond fans, real true Bond fans, are very defensive of James Bond. So when somebody says, we've never experienced James Bond, there's a reason we go to Casino Royale. We know nobody's going to walk away unsatisfied. I don't care if you don't even know who James Bond is. It has the perfect Bond girl, who, by the way, is firing strong without having to say, knock you over the head. The love connection between the two from beginning to end is so robust.
Yes.
And you feel it and you connect it. And I'm going to say it even more so than On Her Majesty's Secret Service. Vesper as that connection point. The bad guy is so evil, but there's different layers there and the trouble he gets into. What I loved about Le Chiffre in this is, honestly, Le Chiffre is as nervous and on the run as anybody else in this film.
Yes.
He is not, and this is what I had trouble with Spectre. Blofeld is this all-powerful architect of your pain. No, the best bad guys are fallible. They cry. They have issues.
Yes. He is a rat who has been cornered. He is desperate, and that makes him dangerous. That makes him scary. So yeah, I absolutely agree that there is a Bond archetype villain that is perfectly serviceable. Like you said, the Blofelds, the Dr. No's, the people who have tons of resources, who have minions at their disposal. That's fine, and that works great. But there's also the cornered rat who's now desperate. I mean, he is in big trouble.
Exactly.
And again, and they show that with the interaction. The terrorists in the beginning, he takes their money. Now they want it back.
The stairwell fight is a great intersection. It's
Spectacular.
Like, how is this all going to come together?
Yes.
Why did they even say that in the beginning? And it's like, how many films do we see nowadays? They leave these tethered, hanging ends that don't come together.
Yeah.
This perfectly intertwines together. even to the point of Mr. White's connection with this whole thing. But let's talk about some basics. So the music. What did you think of the music overall, from the title all the way through?
Oh my God, the score is absolutely spectacular.
David Arnold.
David Arnold, he really is, and I don't feel like it's a fair comparison to compare him with John Barry, but I feel like David Arnold has been such a treasure to the Bond franchise. When he came in, it was like, oh my God, finally, thank you. We have someone who understands James Bond, who can deliver a powerful score.
Tomorrow Never Dies, to me, is probably one of the best James Bond scores to date. No matter what you feel of the film.
The boat chase is like the quintessential Bond score. I think, oh my God, what a piece of music that is. So yeah, David Arnold, and in fact, I'll even mention Daniel Kleinman in this conversation too, because I feel like he was the one after Morris Binder who again understood the Bond pre-title sequences and gave us some fabulous work.
Agreed.
So there are such capable people who are involved with the franchise at this point.
And Chris Cornell's.
Oh my God, that was that was another one too. It was funny because when I first heard Chris Cornell. And again, it's funny. I grew up in the 90s, so I grew up with Nirvana and Pearl Jam and Soundgarden.
Yeah.
So I love Chris Cornell like anybody else. I never would have guessed that he could do a Bond score. The Bond song. It never really occurred to me that he would do a good one. So then when I finally heard it, I was like, wow, there it is.
So I used to think that I liked Chris Cornell because I heard it so much. You ever hear something and you're like, well, I don't like it right away, but maybe I'll learn to love it. And I tell you why that's not the case with this. I loved it from the beginning to the end, not because of repetitive listening, because you know what? I've heard the Alicia Keys, Jack White one from Quantum of Solace.
Yeah.
The monk can chase the weasel and you don't know how to kill him because you got the thing and you don't know what you don't have in. But that doesn't get better.
Right.
That still hurts. That still causes brain hemorrhaging. Whereas this one is just amazing. When I crank that thing up in the car, I drive past the speed limit. That's a testimony.
That song does what a Bond song is supposed to do. It sets the tone for the film, and the beat. This is an adrenaline song. It gets your heart pumping. It gets your adrenaline moving. So again, when I hear like a Sam Smith song, I'm preparing myself for a way different film.
Right.
This one, boom. It gets you in the mood for a Bond film, and the rest of the film does not disappoint.
I agree. And the music throughout is so appropriate. My gosh, right now, if I was walking through a busy mall and they played Vesper's theme on only a level 2 or 3, I'd hear it because it's such an emotional connection to when you hear it in later kind of movements. It's sad. It brings you back. It's unbelievable.
And it is so quintessential to her. You can think of like visuals from the film, the broken wine glass and her in the shower. She's
the shower scene.
Oh my God! The shower scene is spectacular. And again, who would have guessed that a scene like that would have been in a Bond film? When you saw that in the theater the first time, you were like, what?
Yes.
Again, this to me was the quintessential James Bond film.
So you know why? And I'm gonna stay consistent here. In the James Bond series as a whole, it is the little things that I love the most. It's not the grandiose skiing off of a cliff. Of course I love that. Who doesn't? It is, Connery putting the hair on there. It's Roger Moore doing something very subtle about, putting some aftershave. In this case, something like Bond, after he's gone through this stairwell fight and he drinks the drink and he looks in the mirror and there's blood running down. And they don't cut. He just sits there for a good 6-second beat and he just stares at himself like, look at you, man. There's blood running down, and they kind of like, they did something with the film stock where it looks kind of grained.
Yes.
I'm like, that is a simple thing, but I remember that. Look at me, I'm painting the story right now. It just stays with you.
And not only, that, and I'm so glad you brought that up. Not only that, but I think it's one of the few, if only, scenes in the film that I think that is handheld, where the camera is handheld and moving, and it's like, and there's a reason for. You're absolutely right. He's like drinking down a bunch of whiskey as he's washing himself, and he's got this look on his face, like he's just like, and you're right. He stops and looks at himself in the mirror, like he's, literally looking at himself, like, what am I?
Yeah.
What am I? What is this life that I have? What have I just done? And it's again, and part of the theme that is subtle in the movie. is this who you are? Is this what you want to be? Is this?
But the director and the editor had to have a conscious decision of, guys, we could cut it like after he drinks and puts the glass down, or we can hold it there and have him regard, because this is the Bond.
Yes.
And to me, Casino Royale, the reason the movie works so well for me is because it is an entire movie. It's 2 hours and 40 minutes or whatever, how long it is, of scenes that connect to that to make one whole experience. And it's unraveled. It's unrivaled to the point where I used to say Thunderball was my favorite Bond movie.
Yeah.
Probably because of emotional reasons, connections with my dad. It's Casino Royale, hands down.
Yep.
So not only I'll volunteer, not only do I think this is the best Daniel Craig, I think it's the best Bond film.
And it's funny, for years, On Her Majesty's Secret Service has always been traditionally my favorite Bond film. And even when Casino came out, and I remember resisting, I'm like, I can't let this young whippersnapper take the lead and be my favorite. I have to have one of the 60s
He's
classics.
his age, by the way, whippersnapper. Yeah, okay.
Right. But I just had to admit, I said, Casino, it is just beginning to end the perfect James Bond film. It really is. Everything. One of the things I love about this, and we alluded to it when we talked about GoldenEye, because I think Martin Campbell's influence is part of this. They take the elements of Bond, and they sort of look at it through a different prism. And it's kind of and probably the least effective one is when he makes the joke, and she says, "Oh, that's quite a good line." He goes, "Yeah, it was kind of a good line," or whatever. It was almost like that was the birth of the quip.
Right.
But there were other things that I thought were so much better. When he puts on the tux for the first time.
Yes.
Now, again, I think a lot of people sort of interpret it differently. Some people have said, is that really the origin of James Bond putting on a tux for the first time? That was not how I read that.
Right.
I read that as Bond has plenty of experiences with tuxes, with dinner jackets. This one happened to fit better. It was cut differently.
Yes.
And it's not even really so much for James Bond personally as it is us, the audience. There's James Bond. The musical beats at that moment are like classic Bond, like beats you would have heard in You Only Live Twice. Oh my God.
Well, by the way, I'll go one interpretation. I agree 100%. I have that same interpretation, but I think it does something else. And this is how multi-level this film is. It also puts you into Bond's place, which is what Fleming wanted. Fleming didn't describe Bond to nauseam because he wanted you to really impose yourself, project yourself onto Bond. What Campbell did so beautifully in that shot was he said, guys, every time you put on a tux, I know you look at yourself as Bond.
Yes.
And he said, that's you. And by the way, furthermore, guess what? Your wife and your girlfriend, they're Vesper and they're laughing at you.
Right.
They're giggling.
They're
because
winking to
you. Your wife is like, oh my God, he's having a Bond moment.
Yeah.
To me, I go back to that scene and I'm like, they knew us so well.
Yes.
That's us.
There's a reason why the camera is not facing Bond, it's facing the reflection in the mirror.
Exactly.
So, yes, so perfect. You're right. And your woman is off in the wings, kind of just with a little giggle and a wink, like, oh, he's doing his James Bond
all right,
thing.
I'm going to go back to dressing.
Go ahead. You do your Bond thing. I'm going to go up. Right, I'm going to go
By the way, we unknowingly, because we are having a gush fest, we're opening up a lot of problems. And I'll tell you what the problem is. You have all of these incredible strengths to the point where it's like a great vacation. It's like, oh my gosh, how are we going to top the next one? You have such a strong Bond girl, for example, in Vesper.
Yeah.
By the way, I still think she's the most beautiful. I think she's the most engaging. I think she's the most multidimensional.
Yes.
Is she good? Is she bad? She has all these incredible things that Bond girls in the future, what are they to do? And by the way, Quantum of Solace, maybe it is a good film, but does it get a fair shake? Skyfall, Spectre, like all these things. Bond 25. I mean, look at the discussion that's going on now.
Yeah.
Of course, we're going to compare it to Casino Royale.
Yeah.
We're not going to, no one's saying, oh, I hope we get another Spectre. I don't think anybody is. No. Not that we hate Spectre.
Probably not.
I don't know, a bad Bond film is like sex and pizza. Even when it's bad, it's good.
Right, exactly.
Is that a quote? I don't know. Yeah. But what do you think? I mean, do you think Casino Royale has ruined us?
Boy, that is a great... it's funny. I remember after Casino, I said to myself, they can't do that again.
Right.
It's just... Casino Royale is just too perfect. Again, it was the last novel that they never did a big screen adaptation for.
Although there is content they haven't used in other novels.
True. Right, but again, if you're going to talk about just a full blown story, and,
True,
they could go back.
Right.
See, I felt after Casino, I said the only way they can keep this momentum up is if they went back and they did Ian Fleming's Live and Let Die. If they really went back and redid the novel, the way it was done, because again, the novel was, if you read that novel today, you could absolutely read that with Craig in mind, and it works.
Right.
I mean, I'm not saying they wouldn't make some changes. I'm not saying they wouldn't make some updates. They would, which they did perfectly in Casino.
Yeah.
But there's the scene where Roger Moore's got his little pinky in the thing, right? And
Yes.
they're gonna snip it off if he doesn't. In the novel, they do something similar, but in the novel, they bust his finger.
Yeah.
They bust his finger, and he fights his way out. He fights his way out like a dark hallway, busts his way out onto the streets of Manhattan, and a car chase ensues. That's a Craig movie. That, to me, is a Daniel Craig movie. So I always felt, I said, that's the only way they could possibly follow Casino Royale. I mean, they did the reboot. They called it a reboot, so why not? They didn't. They went with Quantum, and they kind of went and did their own thing. So... Again, and I'm not going to bag on Quantum, but it's, again, there was really no way to live up to that standard of Casino.
By the way, to me, 100% of Bond 25 success, and I'm saying 100%, because everybody's like, oh, they got this person back and this person back, and this distribution company, and they're going to these locations. It's 100% on storytelling, and I know that's like duh, David, but the writer and the director, I think, are going to be everything, because. Every one of these things, if you look at all the 6 films that we talked about being really good or what's our favorite, it is all around good storytelling. The actors are great. I mean, but if we ever said, oh, you know what, he just didn't have the chops, he ruined the movie. Even Lazenby, we didn't say that.
Right.
I mean, that's one of the best movies.
Yeah.
So the reality is, I think it is going to, I'm hoping and praying the story is just really crisp and sound.
I completely agree, because that is the thing. Again, when you walk away, you always look back on it, and what's the first thing you think of? It's not, I mean, your experience when you see it is one thing. But, again, we're in an age where we're going to dissect these things until the cows come home. We're going to buy Blu-rays or I mean, we're going to watch them and rewatch them. So the story has to be tight, and it doesn't have to be complicated, because again, the story of Casino Royale, what's the story? He's a bad guy, he plays cards, let's bankrupt him so he's broke, and then we can capture it. It's not a complicated story, but it works so effectively. So again, and I think one of the things that Purvis and Wade tends to do, just my humble opinion, if I had to take a guess, they come up with a villain plot and then work backwards. Because the villain's plot is very integral, important to their stories. It's not just a little twist at the end, or it's not just again, you could have just any MacGuffin and run with it. The ATAC is just a MacGuffin that here it's out there. The chase begins.
It's interesting you say that, because there are some writers, even in advertising, they start out with the problem and they write the solution.
Yes.
And in many cases, for example, I know that the Bond producers have focused on, social media is hot right now, or influence in newspapers is hot, or the Cold War is hot, or, write about that, and then they build a story arc around it.
Yeah.
What I would love is to take a slightly different way and really start with the characters of the story. If you start, and by the way, you've got so much with Daniel Craig, because he's a character's actor that you can, by the way, we've now stopped talking about Casino Royale and we're on to Bond 25.
We'll come back.
This is what happens. But I will say this, I personally, because of my appreciation and connection and even your love of Casino Royale, I will not walk into Bond 25 with Casino Royale in my mind.
Yes.
I'm not, because it is a very unfair comparison.
Sure.
It's like comparing one of your kids against another. It's just, I'm going to keep my mind open to it.
Yeah. I think what I will do is...
See how that goes.
If I have to... I will probably watch Spectre right before I go to see the film. Because I feel like not only is the bar set reasonably, this is probably where the story is going to bloom from. So it's probably the one that they want people to have fresh in their mind. And again, it's not Casino Royale.
Yeah.
So my expectations are not going to be unreasonable. And again, I'm hopeful for Bond 25. I think they can do some interesting things with this. I've seen examples of movies in the recent past that were so good, they almost retconned what came prior and sort of shined a new spotlight on things. And, and I think there can be a salvation for Spectre if this next one works.
Agreed. Well, we do we even need to ask? I mean, Joe Darlington. Joe Darlington.
Yeah.
Is Casino Royale Daniel Craig's best outing?
Casino Royale is Daniel Craig's best outing. And again, this cements my theory better than I think any film that we've done prior to this. Again, this is where they went back and said we need to do a back to basics James Bond story.
Yes.
And I frankly can't even think of a better example where, again, they had the very first Bond novel still untapped, ready to go. They finally got the rights to it. They did it, and boy, did they do it. They just did it in spades. Amazingly, the story that is in the novel is the primary story of the film. I really thought if they ever did this film, they would just give it some lip service. There'd be card games for sure. Mm-hmm. We'll name the bad guy Le Chiffre. We'll name the girl Vesper. That's probably it. But they did the story, and they did it right, and they did it, and it just proves that there are such great stories in there to be told. And if you stay faithful to the source material, at least in this example, there's some good stuff there.
Agreed.
Everything about this film just works.
I actually think that his best was Cowboys and Aliens. No, I agree. In fact, one of the things you said in one of the previous vlogs with On Her Majesty's Secret Service is the filmmakers actually improved on the plot of the book. And I think in this case, the things that they added incrementally to make it into a movie from a novel were better. I mean, they really did and made things better.
That is very true.
And by the way, since this is our last one of these, weep, we actually have to kind of do a recap and see, because this was originally Joe Darlington's theory. Did your theory of each Bond actor's first one being the best, did it ring true?
Did it weather the storm?
Sean Connery? You said no.
Yeah, I said no.
Gotta stick with that.
I gotta stick with it, yeah.
Lazenby by default.
Sure.
Roger Moore, you said no.
No.
Timothy Dalton?
Yes.
Yes?
Absolutely.
Pierce Brosnan, GoldenEye?
Yes, with an asterisk, yes.
A complicated yes.
A complicated yes.
Yes and no. And Daniel Craig was yes.
It was a resounding yes.
All right, so I think the majority was yes. And for me, more so than you. Because I really thought, for example, for me, those, like Live and Let Die, to me, that was a resounding yes.
Yeah.
So I think your theory stood up a little bit stronger with me, but also, I think, defensible with you.
Yeah. I think, like I said, I kind of...
Not hanging your head in shame.
No, I kind of cheated in the Connerys because I kind of feel like the whole first four, was the golden age of James Bond. Dr. No being one of those.
That's what scientists call fudging the results.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, it's all these side effects, but look, you don't have erectile dysfunction anymore.
Right. So Connery gets a kinda. Lazenby gets a by default. Roger not as much. Then the rest, yeah. I mean, again, Dalton, yes.
Yeah.
Mostly Brosnan, yes, and
a strong
Craig,
maybe for Brosnan. This has been so scientific. Well, listen, we hope you enjoyed this. I mean, or this could have been the rantings of two fans in a basement somewhere. But anyway, thanks for joining us. This has been David Zaritsky.
Joe Darlington.
We'll see you real soon. Cheers.